Welcome to The Good Word. My name is Vincent Goodwill, senior NBA reporter for Yahoo Sports. We are part of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. Get us wherever you get your podcast. If you're listening, you're probably listening at some point on Monday. We are recording this on a Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening Eastern time. We are right in the aftermath of Kyrie going full March Madness for everybody to see. We are recording this just because it just fits in our schedule better to do a Sunday night rather than Monday morning. You'll still get your CDs and tapes the way that you need to get them. I have a bit of a, shall we say, frustration with the NBA. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But producer John, you were able to see Kyrie Irving's latest Houdini act, that left-handed shot from a step inside the three-point line at the buzzer to give Dallas yet another win. I think that is 5 out of 6. Luka Doncic made his return. I'm going to let you gloat, and then I'll just give you a 360 sort of view of Dallas at the moment from me. So go ahead. Here's your 15 minutes of fame.
Oh, geez. I don't even know how much I want to gloat because I know the 360-degree thing. Like, it's not all perfect with the Dallas Mavericks, but like, damn, man, what a victory. They beat the champs. And like, the Nuggets have been playing fantastic basketball. Not just for weeks, for like months, but specifically lately, they starting to look like the team we saw in the playoffs last year. And in the first half of this game, I think I sent out a post on Threads that maybe said this. There was a point where I was like, it is unfair that they have both Jokic and Aaron Gordon because those two guys just get down near the hoop, dominate, wait for the double team to come, and then find the other guy. And they were crushing it. But the Mavericks, they have Kyrie Irving. They have Luka Doncic. They don't have much else, but they played good defense, which they haven't been doing for a long time. And the key to this game, we'll get back to the game winner, the key to this game is I think the Mavericks had like 20 more rebounds than the Nuggets. Like, if you look at the team stats, it is hilarious because the Nuggets had more three-pointers made, more free throws made, more assists, less turnovers, more block shots, more steals, a higher free throw percentage, a higher three-point percentage by about 20 points, a higher field goal percentage. But the Mavericks had 22 more rebounds. That's not a Mavericks team that I am accustomed to, man. Like, when they traded for Kyrie Irving, everyone was like, they're too small. They're too small. They're too small. When we saw them last year just fall apart and they got to the point where they tanked their way out of the play-in so they could retain their draft pick, and everyone's like, they're too small. They don't play enough defense. They're too small. They just dominated a team with Jokic and Aaron Gordon. They dominated them on the glass. That was amazing. And then at the end of the game to just be like, we need some points. Luka hit a step back three to tie the game. Kyrie hit. I mean, like, the first thought that went through my head when I saw that was my dad, my uncles, my grandfather growing up telling me about Magic hitting the sky hook his rookie season when he had to play center when Kareem was hurt in the finals. And granted, this is not the finals. This is not even a playoff game. But I'm like, he just hit a left-handed sky hook from 20 feet to win the game. I mean, he's crazy. He's crazy. I saw Yahoo Sports tweeted out Dame's tweet where he said, Kyrie's the most talented MFer ever, man. It's hard to argue. It's a hard point to argue.
Well, he can do things that you don't teach, that you can't teach, that you never teach. And he's almost like a self-taught piano player. You know what I mean? Where you look at him and maybe he doesn't play the scales, but he can just play a song by ear, like that sort of thing. Like, he's just a freakish basketball player. And I'm not going to poo-poo Dallas, believe it or not, from my 360 view. I'm not going to poo-poo them. It pulls them, at least as of this moment, into a three-way tie for sixth, I believe, with Phoenix and with Sacramento. So they want to get themselves out of that play-in. You definitely want to get out of the play-in. You want to not only get out of the play-in, you want to get off of that 7-8 line. You know what I mean? Because the Lakers and Golden State are both angling for that 8th seed. And I'm going to get to giving the league some credit in a little bit before I do what I do as far as some of the other things that I discussed earlier. But the thing with Dallas, and you spoke on it, you just touched on it, you lightly tapped on it, and I'm going to explore it a little bit more. The fact that Dallas has two guys that at the end of a game can create shots, can get great shots, and they don't need a whole lot of help. They don't need the screen. They don't need you bringing the defense to them. Kyrie, as we just saw, can create something out of nothing. He literally created something out of thin air. Luka, we've seen his movies. We've seen the magic in the playoffs, and he's been excellent in the second half of this season. If you're a Dallas fan and you're saying, all we got to do is get in, it doesn't matter who necessarily we play because we're probably going to be at some level of positional disadvantage, especially up front. If you wanted to play in Minnesota, you had to deal with Towns if he comes back, Rudy Gobert, and of course, the Ant-Man. If you're dealing with Oklahoma City, yeah, Oklahoma City's a little light in the pants. I'm 100% with you there. All you got is Chet as big dude, and then you got Jalen Williams, who's just dude. You know what I mean? I don't care how tall Jalen Williams is or isn't. That dude is a dude, and he gonna play hard, and he gonna get in your chest. And then you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to worry about. But I wouldn't worry about that if I were them. We're saying all we need to get is A, out of the play-in, John, and B, all we gotta do is get to game one of a playoff series on the road in the fourth quarter in a competitive game. Because we got Kyrie and we got Luka, and if those butts get tight on the other end, because we can play loose and free. If I'm Dallas, I'm saying we're not playing with a whole lot of pressure. You're not playing with house money because there's always consequences. But you're not saying we have to win game one at home to establish home court advantage of a series. We have to win game two. They can just play loose and free. You keep it competitive. You tell Luka and Kyrie, one of you guys catch fire late, do your thing, and you steal a game on the road, and boom, home court advantage is flipped.
I'll say this. Because I'm a fair man. You know this. I'm fair.
You're emotional and passionate, but you are fair.
Always. That was not the Nuggets' best game. They have several levels above that. And in a 7-game series, I don't think Dallas stands a chance against Denver. I don't think really anyone stands a chance against Denver in a 7-game series.
If you notice, I didn't say Denver. I said Oklahoma City and Minnesota. I did not say Denver, but go ahead.
No. And you're right. But like, I don't want anyone to take away from this. Like, wow, the Mavericks, they beat the Nuggets. The Mavericks are coming. They're not at that level. They caught the Nuggets at the right time. They had the right game plan. They hit the right shot. If this game even goes into overtime, like you were a week or two ago getting on Jason Tatum for taking a shot with like 4 seconds left, or no, taking a shot at the end of the game instead of taking it with like 5 seconds left. This is the argument against that, because Jamal Murray missed a shot with 4 seconds left. If he holds on to that for 3 more seconds, they go into overtime. I almost guarantee you Denver wins the game with more time. But Dallas happens to win. They played a good game. They deserve a win. I deserve to be happy and excited about it.
You do.
Watch out for Denver still.
And here's, for as smart as basketball has gotten, because we love to say up and down that basketball has gotten so much smarter than what we've done. We're done with the 90s, and those guys are stupid, and they don't have left hands and all that other shit, right? Yeah, y'all so smart. We've had 2 games on Sunday, on the Lord's Day. We've had 2 games where these 2 dudes who are really good at basketball, Jamal Murray and Cade Cunningham, decided to go against their natural mother-loving minds to go early when they didn't have to. Cade Cunningham, who is in year 3, but in essence in year 2, goes with 10 seconds left. The Pistons coming back against the Miami Heat. I'm there for that game. I'm there. And the Pistons come back, and it's a game that they probably weren't going to win in overtime. I have no problem with Cade going slightly early. I have a problem with Miami has a foul to give. So that means if you're driving to the basket, they're probably just going to grab you and have you reset anyway. But you take a 3 with 10 seconds left, a contested 3, wasn't an open 3. But if you're saying Cade is in his 3rd year, learning experience, fine. What about the dude on the sideline? You get a stop. You don't have an advantage. You don't leave a young team to its own devices late in the game when they're drowning, and they are not drowning per se, but they need every win that they can possibly get at this stage, John. And you're at home, and you're in a game that you probably shouldn't be in because they were down big and they came back and they stormed back against a Miami Heat team that's really good. And normally some coaches, no, and John, I'm giving the Miami Heat the respect that they deserve, and you will too on this here podcast, okay? There are things that we do on this podcast. We respect the Miami Heat, and Victor Wembanyama is Big Slim. Those are the only two rules that we got here. We don't got a whole lot of rules. All right? We don't got a whole lot of rules. But to me, as a coach, if you don't have the numbers, you don't have the advantage, you call a timeout. You know what I mean? And Cade Cunningham is a really good player, but he's still learning. It's not like you got Giannis up there at the top of the key and saying, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Okay, fine. That disturbed me. You just mentioned Jamal Murray, another all-NBA type of player, all-NBA talent, at least. We're going to get to that later. John, I thought basketball was supposed to be so much smarter now. We're done with these. We're done with these old dudes. Like, explain to me, John, explain this to me. Speak for your generation. Speak for the kids. Speak for the kids, John.
Sir, I'm about 3 weeks younger than you. Just because I'm defending these dudes who are bashing on Michael Jordan's left hand does not actually make me a youngster. I do think basketball is a lot smarter now. Yeah, I think it's a lot more in depth. When you're coming down the court, it's a lot less just me against my man and throw a pick. Like, you know what the other actions are on the court and the different like flow offenses where it's like this guy's going to go here and this guy's going to go here, which are all just kind of like it grew out from the triangle offense. It became a bigger version of the triangle offense. But I think things can be more complex now. But I don't think coaches have necessarily gotten better. I don't think coaches are better at calling timeouts or anything like that. I think it's just there's a higher level of understanding in the game now.
Oh, the game has reached a higher plane.
I think so. And to your point, like, it's not necessarily that Cade tried to do something that was simple against complex. Like, Monty needed to call a timeout. You know why Kyrie had those seconds to you know why a play was drawn up to get Kyrie in a spot where he had some space against a guy who couldn't keep with him? Is because Jason Kidd called a timeout. Like, they got that rebound off the Jamal Murray miss. They tried to run down. Jason Kidd was like, nope, timeout. We're advancing the ball, and I'm writing up a play.
I'm with you. 100% with you. 100% with you. So there's that. I just had to get that off. That's not even my frustration for the day. I'm going to let y'all know my frustration for the day after the break. But before we go to the break, John, I'm sure you saw last night before Clockgate in Los Angeles. Like, the NBA wants Golden State and the Lakers so bad that they decided to elongate the game by another 20 damn minutes last night. You can't get them in a 7-game playoff series. You may not even get them in a play-in, depending on how things shake out, even though that's what it looks like. So the NBA said, hey, y'all, let's just keep this party going. Somebody pressed the Buffalo Wild Wings button, and the clock was messing up, and the officials were reviewing stuff that took 5 seconds to handle. And poor Mike Breen. Mike Breen has never criticized the officials a day in his life. And even he was like, come on, y'all. What are we doing here? But aside from that, we got to see how critically important Anthony Davis is to the Los Angeles Lakers. Critically important. Because it was a freeway to the basket as soon as he got hit in the eye. And he looked like he got hit in the eye in a way that's going to cost him some games. Like, he's going to be walking around with sunglasses and Advil for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, he got hit pretty damn good, and he missed the rest of the game. And you got to see the effect if that player is not on the floor. And that's not to say that Anthony Davis is the best player on the Lakers and everything else. Like, that's a moot conversation at this point, especially on a game where LeBron James scored 40 points or 40 whatever, and hit that leaning left-hander, but, you know, the inches of his chin were on the out-of-bounds line, and it was taken away, and that led to the first of like 1.5 million reviews, and the league should, you know, I'm not going to fuss at the league for getting it right, because we tell the league all the time, get it right, use the technology to get it right, and that's what the technology was there for. It just took way too damn long, and then the technology actually messed up on the shot clock. But you always get the feeling, John, and tell me if I'm wrong. you always get the feeling that people look at the Warriors and Lakers after they play one of these classic games. They had a Saturday night game, I think sometime in January, like the double overtime game. It was an ABC game, a Saturday night game. And you always get the feeling in the immediate aftermath that people are like, okay, these teams can go on a run. And I'm like, am I missing something here? Did y'all not see these teams play each other? I'm not saying these are two glass Joes, but I'm saying they're at the bottom of the Western Conference playoff picture for a reason. And because they've been so exposed to us, we tend to overrate the wins. We tend to way overrate the losses. And I don't think people understand, John, the situation that both teams are facing. Okay, John, you win the 9-10 game, no matter who it is. Let's say the Lakers win the 9-10 game. They're in the 9-10. Golden State might actually be at home for that game. So let's say the Lakers go on the road and they win the 9-10 game. They beat Golden State. They knock Golden State out. Then you got to go to 7-8 on the road again 2 days later and win that game. And then maybe you get in, right? So let's say you win both of those games on the road, and then you're in. And you're in as the 8th seed. And you could be staring down the barrel of the Denver Nuggets, or staring down the barrel of the Minnesota Timberwolves, or maybe staring down the barrel of the Oklahoma City Thunder, with 2 more games on the road. So you will have played 4 straight games on the road to start your playoff. Where they do that at? Like, at what point will the fatigue of playing high-stakes playoff basketball catch up with you before you even have a chance to get in the series? You'll be down 0-2 and emotionally spent because of everything that you've done to get to this point. Now, that's not just the Lakers, that's Golden State, that's whomever. But as great as it is for the regular season, John, because this is great for the regular season. Don't make any mistake on what I'm saying here. I am a fan of the play-in. I think it would be really compelling to watch Dallas have to fight off Golden State and LA for the 8th seed. Like, that would be really fun. But I like the fact that it's created more compelling matchups from now until the end of the regular season. Every game, unless you're the Boston Celtics, means something. Or the Detroit Pistons, or Charlotte, or Atlanta, or Washington, or whomever. But by and large, if you're a team worth a damn, every game is going to mean something because you're fighting for some level of playoff positioning. But it leaves you so spent. And I don't think that people truly, in my opinion, John, I don't think people truly understand the toll that is going to take on these guys. Because we want spring Steph, we want spring LeBron. Man, I don't know if they're going to have all these games left in their bodies to get through the play-in and then to get into a first-round series and make it competitive. Maybe I'm tripping.
You're not tripping. I'm going to dip very slightly into a thing that we've been talking about off air for better part of a week. Maybe we'll dig into more on Wednesday. But the worst thing for this situation is that Miami Heat did this last year. They got in as a play-in team. They made it all the way to the finals. There was always going to be, with or without a play-in, there was always going to be, hey, do you think LeBron and the Lakers can turn it on and go on a run? Do you think Steph and the Warriors can turn it on and go on a run? We've been doing this with superstars forever, but now it's harder to dismiss it because the Miami Heat did it last year. We saw it with our own eyes. So you can sit here and be like, it's too tiring. It's too exhausting. You can't do it. And someone's going to be like, well, then explain Miami last year. I'll explain Miami last year. You want to hear the explanation as to why it happened for Miami last year and can't happen for the Warriors, the Lakers this year? The East is trash. That's the difference. Like, the Miami Heat get in last year, they're not playing the Denver Nuggets until the finals. So I think the West is so much better than the East right now, and it's a thing we don't talk about enough.
No, we don't.
That teams getting in the play-in in the East maybe have a chance of going on a run. Teams that get in the play-in in the West, that's like Jake
getting led to slaughter. That's
all. On No Cap Room, Jake and Dan were talking about people keep calling the Western Conference playoffs a bloodbath waiting, right? And Jake was like, I don't want to use that word. So instead, I think we called it a gauntlet. It's a gauntlet. And like, there is nobody in the Western Conference Finals or in the Western Conference playoffs that anyone else wants to play. They are all difficult teams.
Yep.
And on the other side of the bracket, like the Bulls and the Hawks are probably going to be in the play-in, and everyone wants to play those teams. So it's different. I don't think anyone coming out of the Western Conference play-in has a chance of making it even to the Western Conference Finals.
Health will, we all know that health will play a big role in this, especially Minnesota with Karl Towns, Rudy Gobert. Like, you always have to have the caveat of health, certainly. And whenever you have Steph Curry in a 7-game series, LeBron James in a 7-game series, presumably, and Anthony Davis in a 7-game series, you give yourself a puncher's chance. The question is, how much snap is in those punches? The question is, how much do those guys have left? And here's the other question, I think, John. Steve Kerr has gotten handsomely rewarded for all the things that he's done previously and in this new coaching economy, right? 2-year extension coincides with Stephen Curry and all of that. Both the Lakers and Golden State have the tools in hand, have the 1 through 12. The answer is somewhere on the roster. Are you saying that you'd rather have a coach who has to decide if the answer's there that night? Or would you rather have the coach that says, I got my 8.5. I got my 8 guys that I'm playing. And not that I got to tinker with Pods, or I got to tinker with Chris Paul, or I got to tinker with Kevon Looney or Trace Jackson Davis because he's got hops, or how am I going to use Kuminga? Like, it's going to take a stellar coaching job, almost a perfect coaching job, because of the mistakes and errors by both franchises leading up into this point. They have to play perfect basketball, and perfect basketball has to be coached and coaxed out of both teams. And I don't think either team doesn't have the margin for error, and I think that's putting up too much on the coaches. That's my opinion. It's hard for me to fathom both of those teams. And you're talking to a person that loves being in San Francisco and loves being in LA. So I ain't hating. You asking me, Vinny, you better hang out in Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Denver, or LA and San Francisco? Give me Cali me every time, right? Every time. But I got to be realistic with y'all. So on the other side of this break, I'm going to tell y'all how fed up I am with the NBA. Back on a good word here. John, you know that I'm a traditionalist, right? People who've known me, who've seen me here on various other platforms, I'm sure you can probably surmise my basketball sensibilities. I am not a hardcore tradition. Put it like this. It's weird to hear a black man say he's a traditionalist, because a lot of times that don't work for us, okay? Us in systems, us in institutions, that usually does not work in our favor. But in the basketball context here, I have learned over the past couple of weeks and talked to folks with the NBA, John, the all-NBA team, the all-defensive team, in addition to the all-rookie team, which has always been that way, or recently been that way, we're going positionless. It's just going to be pick your 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, whatever it is, and they're eliminating positions. And pardon my French here, I think that's the dumbest shit the league could do. And so much of this is, like, I want people to understand, John. I kind of need people to understand. A lot of us take our votes really seriously. Some people have given up their votes. I've had a vote since 2011. I really cherish it. I really take it seriously just because of the history of the game. I'm a historian of the game. So when I look back at all NBA teams and MVPs and all defensive teams, I want those years to be reflective of what actually happened and not just random pieces to a puzzle. And I feel like the NBA is being very reactive. I don't know if it's Adam Silver or the Minions or whoever the hell it is, but the NBA is almost at a point they react so much to, like, the minutia, to the dumb stuff, that you risk losing your fabric. You risk losing the thing that makes you unique to who you are. Like when I'm looking at the all-pro list in football every year, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, like I want that to be reflective of who was the best playing his position that year. I don't care if the fifth best wide receiver didn't make an all-pro team. Them's the breaks, y'all. Sometimes that just happens. Sometimes you're just at a deep spot and you're the fifth best wide receiver or the fifth best running back or whatever it is. And sometimes there's a quarterback and you're like, man, he made a Pro Bowl or he made all-pro. Hey, those the breaks, y'all. It happens sometimes. But because the NBA has been branding itself as positionless, because the NBA listens to any and everybody, because the NBA wants to be everything to everybody, they forget who they are in instances like this. It's just my opinion. And John, I'm gonna read you, John, the top 5 MVP vote getters from the year 1994. You ready?
Ready.
So the winner, of course, was Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem also won Defensive Player of the Year, and a couple months later, he was Finals MVP, led the Rockets to their first NBA title. Second was David Robinson. You know, there's a trend there. That's a center. You know. Third was Scottie Pippen. You know, that one MVP year. Everybody says Scottie Pippen, hey, you know, he finished third and he was sitting bull and fouling bull and all that in that series against the Knicks. Okay, Scottie was third. Fourth and fifth, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq was in year 2. And Patrick Ewing with the New York Knicks. Pat wound up leading the Knicks to the NBA Finals. So you know what? So you got 1, 2, 4, and 5. You got 4 centers and 3 spots for All NBA. Guess what happened, John? Patrick Ewing didn't make All NBA. Oh well, them's the breaks, dog. He went to the All-Star game. He's noted as being a top 5 MVP guy. He just didn't make. He just wasn't an All NBA guy because the position he played was healthy and stacked. But because Joel Embiid finished second 2 years in a row to Nikola Jokic, or because Nikola Jokic finished second to Joel Embiid last year, we can't have Nikola Jokic on second team. Yes, we can. It's okay. We don't have to be so sensitive and reactive to everything. And I know that the NBA brands itself as being positionless, but there are still certain roles that you need filled on a court. You need someone to make plays. You need someone who functions as a point guard. You need someone that functions as a scorer. You need someone to protect the rim and rebound. You need all those things can be filled at different spots, but functionally, you know who does what. You know what position is supposed to do what, right?
We've done this already. Like when I was growing up, when you were growing up, as I stated, I'm like 3 weeks younger than you. There was a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward, a power forward, and a center. Now there is 2 guards, 2 forwards, a center. Sometimes it's 2 guards, 2 wings, a big. Sometimes it's 2 bigs, 3 smalls. Like we kind of do this already, but no one ever goes, oh, it's just 5 positionless guys out there.
It's not, because nobody plays basketball like that.
No one watches basketball like that.
Nobody does. It's stupid. Look, if you want to tell me, okay, Vinny, we don't have really traditional point guards anymore. Chris Paul's the last of a dying breed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. I'm with you on that. If you want to say Jokic and Embiid are, 2 of the best players in the league and they happen to play the same position, okay, cool. I'm fine with that too. Right? But we can divvy it up in a different way. We don't have to go completely positionless. You don't have to turn this into something with no structure. That's my problem, John. It's no structure to this. I want to have freedom within the structure, but there needs to be structure. Okay? Even if you do 2 backcourt players, 3 frontcourt players, why would that not work? We do that for the All-Star game when they ask the media, hey, media, can you vote on what players you would consider to be your top 5, All-Star players in the East and West? Because the media has 25% of that vote, the fans have 50% of that vote, and the players have 25% of that vote. We don't do point guard, shooting guard, 3, 4, 5. We do 2 backcourt and 3 frontcourt. Why couldn't we do that there? It doesn't make any damn sense. And I get it. And Nick Wright brought it up. Last week, it was a really fun episode with Nick. Me and Nick, of course, are diametrically opposed to a bunch of different things, but he brought up the 1 year that LeBron James could have and should have won Defensive Player of the Year and lost it to Marc Gasol. And Marc Gasol, I'm not even sure if Marc Gasol made an all-defensive team in 2013. In large part because one voting block votes for all defense, or at least back then, and the media voted for Defensive Player of the Year. But those things tend to happen because sometimes, a lot of times, front court players are lauded as the better defenders, especially in today's game when you can get a lot of blocks and a lot of steals, and you can put yourself on the perimeter and really be adept and show it in a bunch of different ways, especially because you can't put your hands on anybody. It's really hard to have the Gary Payton lockdown defenders, even though we had Marcus Smart win Defensive Player of the Year. I think that was that last year or the year before?
Sounds like last year. Last year, Marcus Smart, I think, won. I'm going to look it up.
Could have been. It's weird. John, I could tell you who won Defensive Player of the Year in 1995 and couldn't tell you who won Defensive Player of the Year last year. It's just the weirdest way my brain works.
Who won it in 1995?
I think that was Mutombo.
It was Mutombo. Yes, I'm glad I called you on it now.
See, I'm good. Don't test my gangster, John. How dare you?
We both got last year wrong.
Last year was Jaren Jackson Jr.
There it is.
Boom. It just took me a second to remember. That's all. Jaren Jackson Jr. Yep. But I say that to say it's okay to have some structure. I'll give you another year. Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler finished 1-2 in MVP in 1992. And luckily, because they were both guards, like the media had the good sense to say, John Stockton, nah. You're going to step aside for Clyde. You're going to have Mike and Clyde as the two guards. It's okay. Like, those things happen and it's all right. In the NBA, for whatever reason, I keep going back to this. Adam Silver has shown to be forward-thinking and pliable. I just gave him a ton of credit for the play-in. I was one of the people saying, hey, let's give this in-season tournament thing a chance, even though it's clearly a money grab. There's a lot of things that Adam Silver has done right since taking over from David Stern. David Stern was known to be inflexible. He was known to be hard-headed, but there were principles there. You know what I mean? There were hardcore principles that he probably wasn't going to bend much on. With Adam Silver, I think he's bending a little too much to, quote unquote, the way that the game is being played. Because who says the game is always going to be played this way? And add to the fact, John, and you pointed this out in the rundown, this affects contracts. This affects super maxes and all those other things. On top of that, we're saying guys have to play X amount of games, have to play 65 games, which is 80% of the season, which I don't think is really all that hard to ask for. But there are some guys who wind up, being a little bit on the threshold, right? But I'm really passionate about this, guys, because I take my vote seriously, and I am a historian, and I know that this might be in the crates. Like, this might be the thing that only Vinny cares about. But I feel like it's something that's ingrained in NBA history. I think it's something that the league should really relent on. Like, the media didn't ask for our vote to determine whether you're going to get a supermax contract or not. Like, you're not necessarily comfortable with that, but you're comfortable with being an impartial party that looks at the league from a wide lens and says, okay, who are the two best guards, or who are the three best forwards, and so on and so forth. I'm rocking with that. And John, I think I have 39 names as like potential All-NBA players.
Okay.
39 names. And you put more names than you need to. Like, I had Paulo Banchero on here as a possible name, not knowing that he was only going to get so much consideration. You know what I mean? I have Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. Those two guys weren't even all-stars for the Pelicans. And the Pelicans are playing really well. And if we're paying attention to Zion besides anything other than his play right now, we are really missing the boat. So so next to a name, John, I put a number. I said, are you a first teamer? Are you a tweener, first, second teamer? Are you a second, third teamer? Like that sort of thing. And believe it or not, John, without Joel Embiid, Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, Julius Randle, Karl Towns, Kyrie Irving, Trae Young, those are guys who are going to miss it because of the requirements. it wasn't that hard to have a preliminary list. Like I haven't even been sent the ballot. The league may say, screw this guy. He's complaining about the ballot. We ain't sending him a ballot, right? That could very well happen. Like the minions can do that. And I guess that would be fair, right? I'd bitch and moan about it. I'll tell them about themselves, but I get it. But it really wasn't but so difficult. The difficulty, John, believe it or not, you want to know the difficult names that I had trouble pegging?
I do.
So, or put it like this, I'll let you guess what names I had difficulty pegging.
Oh, man. I have no idea. Honestly, none. I told you, like, I hadn't even gone through this thought experiment. I don't even know where the line would be drawn right now, because I think you got to put the names down on paper to figure out where that line is, and I haven't done that.
Okay, and that's my thing. I put the names down on paper. The names of the players that I have a hard time pegging, it kind of ties to the earlier conversation when we were talking about the play-in and who could be in the play-in. Where does Steph fit? Where does LeBron fit? Where does Anthony Davis fit? Where does Kevin Durant fit? The standard, the guys who are the standard for the league. Kawhi Leonard, where does he fit? Right? There are some guys who, like, I'm not sure Damian Lillard makes an all-NBA team. I say that as he's in the backdrop of a masterful game against the Phoenix Suns today with no Giannis. I understand it, but I'm just saying, even if we labeled it top 15 players, it would be tough. But if you're saying who are your guards, who are your forwards, who's your centers, that would be a difficult conversation. Is Anthony Edwards first or second team? Is Jason Tatum? Are we sure Jason Tatum's a first teamer? Those are questions that we have to answer. I don't know about the rest of the NBA scribes who listen to this podcast, some of our fellow voters. I'm going to have some level of structure when I fill out my ballot. I'm not just going to go 1 through 5. I'm going to have some level of structure. I'm not going to be rigid about it, but I'm going to have a level of structure when I fill out my ballot. Because I think, I'm going to say it's easier for me, but it's easier to put people where they belong.
Yeah, and like I get the, there's always like, oh, is Luka a guard or a forward? Is Anthony Davis a center or a forward? And then you get into things where it's like, oh, Draymond is probably a forward, but he spends a little bit more time playing center. So is he a center? Like, I get trying to get rid of those conversations because they're silly. Mm-hmm. But that's why I think, it makes sense to be like, okay, we're going to have, 2 backcourt players, 3 frontcourt players, whatever it's going to be, makes a lot more sense. Because like you said, I think it would be a disaster for the NBA if all NBA first team was 4 centers and a guard.
Yeah, that's stupid.
It would be a disaster.
Just stupid. It just doesn't make sense. It's not very smart. And like, John, maybe I'm being I don't know what the word is. Am I being like anti-nerd?
Anti-nerd. I don't think you're being anti-nerd. I think you are understanding that we already had a system in place to pick out the 5 best players in the league each year. MVP. It's why you get to see who the top 5 guys are. And sometimes you get to see beyond that. I don't know who was asking for this. I think there was a lot of people saying, I'm frustrated by this guy getting cornered into this position, or why is this guy this position? But I think they could have made it a little bit freer, a little bit looser, without just saying like, put whoever where you want. It's positionless now.
Free for all, romper room. Just dumb. Just stupid. John, you know how frustrated I am right now. I'm so frustrated that it's ridiculous. Like, I just feel myself being ready to talk in the circles, and I don't want to do that.
I just want to ask you one quick question, and then we can get out of this and go to the next thing or wrap up or whatever.
Yeah.
Is this a bigger deal for you for all NBA, or is this a bigger deal for you for all defense?
It's probably a bigger deal for all NBA, but it's a big deal for all defense because, like I said earlier, the impactful players, like, I feel worse for all defense. I will be more understanding on all defense because everything is so shifted towards the big man that a guy like Evan Mobley or Giannis or Bam Adebayo, like what some of those guys wind up missing out because there's one player or a player and a half at their position that's better than them. And there's not a third team all defense. It's only two. You know what I mean? Like that's why I feel worse for the guy, or I'm more understanding rather for why you have all defense that way. But all NBA, oh hell no. But John, before we get out of here, the viewing guide. So you tell me, what is your game of the week this week?
I was excited for Tuesday's game between the Nuggets and Timberwolves before the Mavericks beat the Nuggets on Sunday. The Nuggets had won 5 in a row. The Timberwolves are trying to find a new identity without Cat. At least they're trying to figure out who they can be over the next month or so without Cat. The Timberwolves had matched up really well with the Nuggets, both in previous meetings this season and in the playoffs last year. And kind of the key to all of that was Cat. So it's going to be very interesting for me to watch how Minnesota decides to defend Jokic without Cat. And if Gobert has to get put on him, which they tend to not do because they kind of want him hanging around the hoop, disrupting those little passes and everything. So I'm watching that game. I think it's on NBA TV on Tuesday night. I'm very excited about that one.
Remember the thing that I said about players who function in certain positions? Because Karl Towns isn't the strongest rebounder or shot blocker, they went out and got one. See how that goes? They just say, hey, we got a center, so we're okay. No, they went out and got someone that does the center things, NBA. All right. My game is Wednesday. It is what could be the Eastern Conference Finals, the Milwaukee Bucks and Boston Celtics. If you just saw the Phoenix Suns and Bucks earlier, Chris Middleton made his way back after his ankle injury. Giannis missed that game. I would expect, especially if Giannis was a game time scratch, that he would be available on Wednesday, like the last time these two teams meet up before possibly the inevitable matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals. Dame possibly, finding his rhythm. He had a huge, huge game today. I think he had like 28 and 14 or something like that. Oh, excuse me, 31 and 16. Excuse me, 31 and 16. Chris
16
Middleton
assists?
had 16 dimes. 16 dimes, baby. Handing them out. Chris Middleton had 22 in limited minutes. I think he only played 25 minutes. If I'm 25 minutes.
I don't want to get you off track, but that Phoenix defense is a problem. Like I had in the news thing, we didn't really get to it. They signed Isaiah Thomas to a 10-day contract. That's a great story and everything.
Yeah, that's going to help him a lot.
Good Lord, that defense is really bad right now.
Maybe it's something we get to with Wednesday's guest, who I'm really looking forward to having. Maybe things just ain't good enough. You know what I mean? And it was something I was actually thinking about when Frank Vogel said, we haven't gotten there yet. And it's hard to say that a team with Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and Devin Booker just isn't good enough. But when you look at them play, it's just hard to get a feel for an identity. It's hard to get a feel for, what do we do great and what can we lean on when things get tight? Because the things that they lean on in the regular season, just on a random Tuesdays, are contested jump shots. And then that's what you're going to be leaning on in the playoffs when those contested jump shots get a little bit tighter. And it's just a lot. I'm looking forward to Wednesday with our guest. I just had to get that off about the positionless stuff. And I'm sure I'll get pinged by Adam Silver and the minions. Because whenever I say something against the league, I get pinged. I get a phone call, get a text message. Every now and again, I get an email. During the Stern era, I got the emails. John, the emails were really fun. Though back in the days when I was like a real rebel for the league. But I'll tell you, that'll be a story for another day. But either way, I'm really looking forward to Boston and Milwaukee on Wednesday night. Could be a conference finals preview unless the Miami Heat have something to say about that. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that we have for you today on The Good Word. Thanks to producer John and all of his Mavs optimism and the entire team who works hard behind the scenes. Thank you all. Dan will be back for another episode of Divine Intervention on Tuesday. And we'll be back right here on Wednesday with a guest on another episode of The Good Word. Until then, everybody be safe.